Being and welcome to the New Ulm Heritage Preservation Commission December meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First order of business on the agenda is election of officers for 2019. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Ann Earl, President.
I'll second that.
Okay. And is there any other nominations for president? Any other nominations for president?
I'll move to close the nominations, cast a unanimous ballot for Ann Earl, President.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Vice President, are there any nominations from the floor? Vice Chair? Kara?
Kara, I'll nominate Kara for vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? That's the third call.
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Kari. You're not here. You get to be here. Approval of the minutes from the August meeting of 2018 are underneath the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to read?
I make a motion to accept the meetings for the August meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Corrections? Motion for approval? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are approved. New business. The first item on the agenda is the National Register Program that Kara Knopf had wished to talk about tonight, and Kara is not here. I will present what I understood her to be asking. She had been inquiring about us becoming a little more active and actually going out into the city and finding buildings that we think should have either local designation or National Register designation. We have had a city site survey done. When did Dan do that? It's
2000.
2000?
Yep.
And in that survey, there are recommendations for national status and sites that could not be registered nationally, but could be locally designated, i.e. St. Peter's Episcopal Church, which is now going up for sale, I understand, after the first of the year. Buildings like that. She wanted to talk about even expanding the local. There is a local historic neighborhood across the street from that. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a South District.
There's a- yeah, a
On
local-
German Street also, there's a few houses that are
Yeah.
in a district, and then along Broadway.
But this one is outside the district, and you'd have to kind of make it little L-shaped just to include that little corner
Correct.
property. One of my questions is, what would be the benefits of that? It's nice to have projects registered or part of the district, but I guess I would have to know what everyone else on this commission thinks. Dave, you look like you had,
I would have had questions for Kara. She's not here.
okay.
No action has to be taken on tonight. You just want to
You want to table it?
table until she's here to discuss what she was leaning towards.
And that's fine. Is everybody in favor of tabling it?
Yes.
Okay, then, would you ask Missy to put this on the agenda for next time?
Yep.
That'd be fine, thank you. Next is Herman Monument. Tom Schmitz has the microphone.
Tom Schmitz with the Park and Recreation Department. Thank you, Chair Earl and Commissioners. You have before you a request that has actually been through it's coming from the Herman Monument Society, the Park and Recreation Commission, and just recently, an hour ago, the Monuments and Cemeteries Commission. Those three organizations have already recommended to the City Council that they authorize application to the federal government for National Historic Landmark status of Herman Monument. The program is a United States Department of Interior program administered by the National Park Service that would elevate Herman Monument from just being listed on the National Register of Historic Places to move up the ladder, so to speak, to National Historic Landmark status. We have a historian that's willing to assist the city with making application, Daniel Hoisington, and he's got a very reasonable fee for assisting us with the application process of approximately $4,000. The Herman Monument Society has already offered the city $2,000 to assist in funding the project. Application would probably take place in 2019, possibly as quick as the first half of 2019. And then it'll sit in Washington, D.C. for some time to come. It will probably take us well into 2020 before we would obtain results from the National Park Service's analysis of our application. So this elevated status of the monument would provide us better and more opportunities for applying for grants. I think we all realize that we're studying the restoration of the monument. We're preparing restoration plans, which will still take us probably another year or two at least. And then when those restoration plans are complete, we would be seeking very large grant sums from the state and federal government to implement the restoration plan. Every portion of the monument needs restoration except for the statuary at top. The Herman statue on top is in pretty good shape, but everything below his feet needs complete restoration. And so this is just another step in a very long, lengthy process of preserving and restoring Herman Monument. So you would be the final body that this would be presented to, and if you, along with the other three bodies, recommend this to the City Council, I will be bringing it to them in January for authorization to make application.
Anyone on the commission have any questions for?
Not a question, but more of a comment that I have family that lives out on the East Coast, and we do quite a bit of traveling and try to hit a lot of the national parks things and things like that. Their pamphlets that they put out include the National Historic landmarks like this, and they don't include if it's on the register and so on. So it will get a lot more advertising, if you will, and probably more people stopping to see it. So.
Are there any other questions? Are you looking for assistance in the grant application as far as fees, costs?
Financial assistance, well, as I've mentioned, the estimated cost is about $4,000, and the Herman Monument Society has already generously offered the city $2,000, so that remains a gap of $2,000. And if the Heritage Preservation Commission has funds and interest in co-sponsoring the application process, you certainly could consider that. Also, the Park and Recreation Department would probably have some funds available to assist if necessary in financing the application process.
Or
Elwood?
six.
Excuse
There,
me.
there is money available in the HPC funds. There's a little over 6,000 left.
If we allocate that now, because you're not funding Dan up front, or are you funding him before that he writes, or as he writes, or what's your contract?
We would be creating a purchase order. We will be consummating a
So that-
purchase agreement, purchase order with Hoisington Incorporated to, pay him once the
So
project
you
is
would consider
complete.
it designated funds then if it's not spent yet by the end of?
Correct, yes.
All right.
Yep, we would be able
So it's
to.
not going to affect our 2019?
No.
Application for
No.
budget? Is there a motion to consider?
I will make a motion for us to consider approval of this or that we go ahead funding.
The balance of the project?
Yes, so that be the amount of $2,000. Okay?
You want to include the top part of the motion too?
And the top part is considering authorization of the application for Herman Monument as the National Historical Landmark.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on the issue? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you very much. Herman thanks you.
I'm scrolling back up. Okay, that's not working. Have you got an agenda up?
Riverside Building.
Okay, is it Riverside? Okay.
Yes.
My computer keeps going back and forth. There.
Riverside Building, ADA
Okay.
compliant.
Click on, left
Okay,
click.
then, Tom, Riverside Building.
Yes, Commissioners, you have before you a conceptual sketch rendering that has been put together for an accessibility project at the Riverside Park Building, the former Franklin School. Presently, Ron Bolden and his Environmental Learning Center group have a lease. We're consummating a lease with him. He's been in the building for a number of years, providing environmental education in a natural history museum to the public. Unfortunately, the building does not meet ADA compliance or guidelines, as you can see the front steps of the building. And one possible way to bring the building up to ADA compliant standards would be to assemble a ramp system and a deck that you have in your packet. And it's up on the screen also here in there we go. Where a ramp would go up the New Ulm north side of the building, the side of the building that faces the playground. And then on the rear of the building, New Ulm East or the Minnesota River side of the building, the ramp would continue to a deck, an observation event and environmental education outdoor classroom space. And then that would provide entrance into the building for ADA compliance for those of mobility impairments. And so we're wondering, we're in the process of working through the Park and Recreation Commission, the Heritage Preservation Commission, and ultimately the City Council to gain authorization to pursue this concept. And then once we have more details as far as construction drawings and updated cost estimates, we would consider seeking funding to implement this ramp, accessible ramp and observation deck space on the rear of the building.
Are there any questions for Director Schmitz?
Is it just made out of wood or?
We don't know at this point about what kind of materials it would be used. If you have, an interest or a request, generally, the park system prefers maintenance, free materials. But if you are going to request, or the city council request or require, natural products such as wood, that certainly could be an option.
This
So I would
building, this building is locally designated, is it not?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. That's the reason I actually sit on the Riverside Committee. And that's the reason it's here tonight, just to make the HBC aware. I mean, it's not going to happen
No.
January 1st.
Well, I've been on this commission for it's a number of years, and I have working with the national, with State Historic Preservation Commission for a number of years, and having been down there with for other reasons and taken tours through there from the SHPO office, the state office, the deck on the back is not compliant with National Park Service standards because they don't like anything to interfere with the faces of the building. However, that being said, it's not the front of the building. Their argument was that the back is also a face of because it comes up from the river and it's the alternate front. There is no other door there. And because it's not just an accessibility ramp that you're putting on the classroom deck. However, I have a very firm belief that that building is being repurposed well. And if the materials blend in with the building and don't detract from it, and this is my personal opinion, I think it's a good project. But I need to hear that.
I'm gonna go along with Ann's comments. I like what they're doing with the building now, repurposing it. It's the last school left in New Ulm of its era. Everything else has been tore down, with the kids using it, and I've wanted to for years.
Not just kids, I
Yeah.
think adults are in there quite a bit too.
I mean, you got the citizens and surrounding communities using it so heavy, and for years I've wanted, and Tom knows that, talked about it, getting the thing ADA compliant. Somehow, some way, whatever it takes, without altering what I call the front of the building. I realize from the river, they say it's another facade of the building. We have not been able to locate, there used to be 2 iron fire escapes. There's some old timers down in the Goosetown area. Do you remember them? Nobody's got photographs of them. They were like catwalks, the old iron
I
fire
remember,
escapes.
yeah. The one, one of the people from SHPO that was most adamant about it was Catherine. She's no longer there, Catherine Sandland. Where you could put an elevator, you could hang, and I'm going, there's a door down there, you'd have to, I think it would destroy the integrity of the building just as much. But that again is my opinion. I know, but I would like to make sure that even Trax lumber, you can find attractive Trax lumber that would blend in with that, which is maintenance free. I don't know if I should say the brand, but
Yes, I think if this design moves forward and the city council authorizes it, we would present a number of different options for materials and costs.
The only request I'd have, which I know Tom will, when we do get closer down the road, 6, 8, 10 months, whatever it takes, just that the HPC is just brought to their attention. Here's what we're gonna use, the different type products, and go from there.
can you put that in a motion so that we can move forward with this, or do you need our approval? Is that what you
I would like to see your recommended approval for the concept, and that more details to come forward, but I would like your recommendation of approval for the concept.
wanna move forward?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve and accept the concept and design, and further details will follow.
Second.
Are there any further questions? Hearing nothing, I call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have our approval.
Thank you very much. Another step in the process. Appreciate it.
I think it's a really nice looking. I'm sure it'll be used well. And it's, okay, Way of the Cross. Elwood?
Okay, this is just more for informational purposes, but we do have a representative from the Way of the Cross, Mr. LaPlante is here, that they are seeking national registry status for the Way of the Cross to be able to fund some of their reconditioning of the stations up there. So it is a locally designated item now, and they're just looking to move forward with this. Apparently, roughly 20 years ago, it was brought up and was told it wasn't eligible at that time, but now it is in that court.
Mr. LaPlante, would you like to say anything to the commission, or do you want to, can you step up to the microphone? Since you're here, you have,
When I started with the Way of the Cross about, maybe 6, 7 years ago, our main duties then were just to blow the leaves off the pathway and pick up branches and try to keep the place looking respectable for visitors. Pretty soon we started to realize how many visitors were actually coming each year, and it's well around 1,000 or more or less, and from all over the United States and some from other countries also. Well, about 4 years ago, I said, there's so much more that could be done with this site because it attracts people to New Ulm, and they visit all the other sites also. Well, I said, why don't we start looking at the register? When we contacted Dan Hoisington and also the Midwest Art Conservation Center, where we had some recommendations from them to start doing some work, not realizing how important it was to come to the committee first. I mean, it was with the help of Ann and Elwood that really got us on the right track. Since then, I felt a lot more comfortable with what we're doing because now we have some real direction. We did not have the direction before. We didn't know we needed it. So I was very happy to hear that Dan Oisington and I forget, Ann, you can help me with this, from the Minnesota.
Shippo?
Mr. Gardner.
Someone from SHPO, Minnesota's Heritage Preservation Commission?
Yes. And it sounds now like we are eligible.
Yeah, I believe he again talked to Dennis Gardner.
Yes. So I believe right now I don't know exactly what to do other than wait for your recommendations and also from Dan Hoisington.
Well, after you get our recommendation, then you just need to sign a contract with Dan, and then he needs to start working on the process, and he'll start working on the preparation for the register status.
Yes.
It's
And-
quite a painless process, other than writing a check.
Right. Well, we do have a contract with Dan,
Okay,
so that's ongoing.
okay.
So now I understand now it's a matter of waiting till about March when it comes before the board.
Correct. My understanding from the emails from Mr. Gardner and Hoisington that he will bring it up in front of SHPO, and once they go through their process, they will make contact
An
with us.
application that has to be filled out. Is Dan filling that out right now?
I believe so. And it sounds like then Mr. Gardner will be in contact with us and just let us know what's going on and
Okay.
get our recommendation and stuff from the local.
Because I know when we put State Street Theater on, we had a contract with Dan for doing the paperwork, and there were certain times of the year, I believe, that it was,
Yeah, Mr. Gardner referenced March is when it was
All
probably
right.
going in front of their committees.
to appear before the state.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right,
Okay. Then I do have two questions though.
yes,
I had been in the process of contacting McDonald Mack
yes.
to do a study
McDonald
on
Mack
the
are the
site.
people that did
They're,
Herman?
they're the one that's doing
Yes.
Herman, yes.
Yeah,
And he said he would call me when he gets here to look at Herman, but he did not call, and I'm not sure what happened yet. But and they're the ones that suggested before we really do anything to apply for the register.
well, you,
Now it
yeah.
sounds more like a go. So I would assume at this point I still can proceed to contact Mr. Mack?
Yep.
Okay.
Quite frankly, and you can talk to Dan about this to make sure, you should be, if you're looking for funding to pay MAC or any, the Midwest Art Conservation Council, or for any work or anything that's done, you could still apply for a legacy grant because you are a not-for-profit. No, that's not correct. You can't, they are now asking for your National Register number. That changed last year. You have to be nationally registered before you can apply for legacy funding. So yeah, as soon as you get the approval and are on the National Register, then you can apply for grant funding through the state
Okay,
to pay for
we'll
that.
do that.
If that was your, yeah.
The second question was, we have been doing some work along the pathway to prevent erosion.
Correct.
There's a lot of erosion that takes place, and I see that because I look for it every year.
Right.
Can I still place this river stone, river rock, along the side of the pathway? It'd be about a 1.5 foot border on the right side of the pathway. That's where we're seeing a lot of dirt washing out of there every year.
Technically, per national park standards, you can replace what was existing, but you can't change what doesn't exist. So you couldn't put a wall that wasn't there. If you replace a wall that was there, it has to be with the same types of materials that you had there. However, if it's an erosion problem, then I don't know, I think it would probably be, it has to be a sensible thing.
Correct,
So,
yeah, that would be my take on it, yeah.
Yeah,
If it's deteriorating the already
Yeah.
existing pathway
then you
and stuff.
should be able to, I mean, I'm not saying build another wall to reinforce it, because you can't necessarily do that, but if you're putting river rock or something
I would-
down.
I don't
What they
think,
do, they put the river rock down, the small 1.25 inch, 1 inch size, and then to keep that in place, they've been placing larger rocks, and that just holds it in place.
That should be fine.
Okay, good, because we wanted to continue with that. So,
So, I would like to entertain a motion to allow the Way of the Cross Committee to go forward with their National Register application.
I will make that, I will ask, make approval of that.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You may
can I have
go
one
ahead.
more question?
Go ahead.
Earlier in the year, one of the arches over the chapel,
Mhm.
on the chapel, had moved significantly, like several inches.
Mhm.
We had Hyman repair that. If we do any other repairs like that, do we need to come to the board before?
You should, if you're going to be making improvements or changes to the structure, they need to come before the board. If it's an emergency kind of repair, you have to ensure the safety of the structure.
right,
I would like to think that you would have done it, because technically you have to do mortar testing and do all of those other things, but you had a reputable contractor, so, but
Okay.
no, on an emergency basis or something like that, no, you should be able to make, you still own the property, you should be able to make the improvements or the repairs and things for the structural integrity of the property.
The steeple is a good example. Every time it rains, we're starting to see some water infringement into the upper portion of the chapel. I think I talked to Elwood about that, and
Yeah.
I'll discuss it more with you in the future.
That would be
Sure.
great.
Yep.
Okay,
thanks.
That would be great. Thank you for appearing.
thank you.
Elwood, do you have a city report?
We did receive our 75% complete Herman assessment back from McDonald Mack, and that is now sitting at the SHPO level, waiting for their comments. That was in 1st of December, they sent it in. So they have 30 or 45 days to comment on that.
30 days.
Then we'll get that back and see what they said, and we've asked for an extension for the final report, and they've given us till June or July for the
Oh,
final,
I was gonna say,
because it was supposed to be the end of the month.
yeah.
So we asked for a 4-month extension to get this one there, so they did give us that. And then the structure at 504 South Minnesota is now down. The foundation remains, it's
That's the
Sibelia
House?
Yes, that is gone.
Was that locally, was that a locally, property that could have been locally designated?
I'd have to go look. I did not verify that. I'm guessing it probably could have been. Maybe.
The architecture probably would.
Probably would have been a driving force of it, yeah. That's what I've got.
HPC Chair report, I have nothing to report other than it's been a good year. And we are hoping to have another good year next year. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
I'll second it.
We are adjourned.